Hello and welcome back, everyone. Today's conversation explores something humanity has turned to for thousands of years in moments of transition, uncertainty, and self discovery: mythology, archetypes, astrology, and the deeper patterns that shape human consciousness. My guest today is Liado Wang. I hope I said that right, even though you just told me. Astrologer, spiritual counselor, and founder of the Healing Kingdom. His work explores how heroes, villains, myths, and zodiac archetypes reveal deeper truths about human nature, morality, shadow, purpose, and spiritual evolution. And what I love about this conversation is that we're not just talking about astrology as personality traits or prediction. We're exploring these systems as mirrors for consciousness itself, as maps of the human experience, as ways ancient civilizations encoded lessons about power and shadow, initiation, destiny, and transformation. So, I'd love to start here. We are in, I think this is a fascinating arc of study and work. How did you become drawn into the mythology, the astrology, the archetypes, and these deeper symbolic systems?
Uh, well, my initial training as an astrologer was very much mythology based, truth be told. Yeah, because my first astrology teacher was very much like a mythologist. And so the training that I had as an astrologer was quite different from the traditional astrology apprenticeship. For example, these days, if you go to those very famous astrology schools, for example, London School of Astrology, if you go to Kepler, right, those are famous schools. They teach astrology in a very traditional way. But my teacher was very much about storytelling. And
Mm,
so my understanding about astrology was based on the stories uh, uh, taught in mythology.
mhm.
For example, my one of the first things that I had to do was to read mythology and read Iliad and Odyssey, and all those ancient stories. And then my teacher would throw questions at me, such as, "Okay, now you have already read the stories. You tell me what you think Venus means in astrology."
Mm.
Well, because you have already read the story about Aphrodite in Greek myth. So Venus is the Roman counterpart of of Aphrodite. So why don't you tell me what you got from the books? What kind of archetype is Venus to you? So that was my initial training as an astrologer. Yeah. Mm.
And that's really powerful because I think that story, and this is what we're going to get into today, story
Uh,
is an easy way to remember, right? I've studied astrology and it wasn't myself until I really understood the stories behind and the
yeah.
mythologies and how it worked that I understood. The story of Osiris and Set and Horus from Egypt, right? I had studied them as the gods and goddesses, but then it wasn't until I started studying the mythology behind that to understand what they were trying to speak about consciousness that I really understood the arc of that. And I
Mm.
think that, you know, uh, in ancient wisdom, in the ways that we work, in the ways that things are, story is the easiest way to pass something down.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. So, mm, I- and that is the reason why usually in my personal counseling sessions, I I would incorporate a lot of storytelling in my session, because I do believe that at the end of the day, what we are experiencing in the modern days for our descendants is mythology anyway. I don't know if I'm expressing myself clearly enough. Yeah. So, for example, when we are talking about those ancient stories that might have happened, right,
Mm-hmm.
thousands of years ago, but from their perspective back then, it was their real life experience.
Yeah.
And then maybe and later when those stories were told, generation after generation, of course, we might have um, exaggerated them a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then we call that mythology or the stories. But at the end of the day, they are just real human experience. Actually, it's very interesting because I, the first time when I traveled to Greece, I was in a taxi with a driver, just me, right? I was there by myself, and the driver, this local guy, Greek guy, and he was asking me why I was in Greece or what I was doing, and I told him what I do, and I said to him, do you guys actually believe in the stories in Greek myth? Like, for example, when one of the most, important heroes in Greek mythology is Hercules. I mean, do you believe that Hercules existed? Because you teach his stories to children, right? For hundreds of thousands of years. He never disappeared from your culture. And what do you think? And it's very interesting that he said, yes, at least I believe, but maybe we exaggerated his ability with the story, to a certain extent. But he said probably there was a very, very strong guy around that time who had to, go through all the trials and tribulations
Mm.
in order
Well,
to find enlightenment.
yeah, and we could go down the rabbit hole here as someone who is a galactic ambassador and works with the aliens and things like on my other end with my mystery school. I believe even more deeply that most of the
Mm,
stories are very true and that
mm,
they are actual before the ancient aliens decided, I call them ancient aliens, but before they decided to leave our planets, that some of these things were those that we looked at them as gods and goddesses, but they were just other races that were here on Earth at that time that gave us
yeah,
some of these mythologies. But we're not going to get into that today. That's too much
yeah.
for our conversation. So, why do you think humanity has always told stories through the myths and the archetypes and the stars?
I think at the end of the day, we are all looking for hope, and
Mm,
that's what carries human being forward, right? For all those years. I mean, human society has never been perfect. I mean, let's just talk about what's happening now this year, right? Or let's say starting pretty much last year, yeah. Wars. I mean, human society has been experiencing wars and death, all these kind of ugly things for thousands of years. Logically, we all know that that's wrong. We all know that, but we never actually are able to eradicate those things. We know we probably shouldn't start a war because millions of people will die, but you know what? Because I'm selfish, I'm gonna start a war, and then everything will be mine. And that's just human nature. And so at the end of the day, I think the reason why we tell stories and we have myth is because we are trying to find hope
mm, mm.
through our darkness, because
Yeah.
we know that we can't eradicate all those selfishness, the jealousy, the hatred that human nature actually carry. But at the same time, just like Pandora's box, when she opened that box, she's also able to catch the golden angel whose name was Hope. And I think
Mm,
that's sort of like as human, that's our sort of like our wish to find the beautiful things and also to identify the ugly things
mm.
in our society, and then so that we can retell those stories so that hopefully our descendant will not make those mistakes again. Mm. That's
Yeah.
my interpretation of
I
that.
love
Yeah.
that. I love the idea of hope. And then also I want to go back to this idea with like when you're talking about war, and we've been in this consistent war for thousands of years. Somewhere in the world there's
Mm.
always something going on.
Yeah.
And my true belief behind the deeper understanding around what war is, one, we have the polarity, the duality. We need to be able to see both sides and have something that experience that. But on a deeper level, we don't actually believe or see ourselves all as the same, as one, as that greater connection that we all have. And so these different sects or these different people, there, I believe that everything comes from love or is a cry for love, right? And so if we
Yeah.
look at
Yeah.
this and say, well, this one community here that's starting this war with this other community, their belief around why they're starting it is their own, it is selfish, their own protection, their own, they're doing something right, they're that
Yeah.
in their reality. And then over here in
Yeah.
this reality, and then so we're living in this world where if we could come to a place of understanding, and I think this is where the hope comes in, the mythologies, the stories of like, how do we bring these together to show that we are not so different? Because I know you were talking about Greek mythology, but I'm sure you've studied others. If you look back along all of the time frames and look into the Vedics, the
Mm,
Essenes, the
mm,
Egyptians, the Greeks,
mm.
the Kabbalah, all of them are saying how their mythologies and stories are all very similar. They're all giving us
Yeah.
some idea of something greater and deeper.
100%. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I grew up with the Eastern culture, right?
Mm,
Chinese myth and the stories. Yeah, and it's fascinating to see the similarities. I mean, especially the deeper meaning behind those stories. I mean, at the end of the day, even though we had very, very different civilizations, that compared with the Egyptian culture, right? I
mhm.
mean, Egypt and China were both very old civilizations. But when you read the stories, yeah, it's very true. Yeah, there's a lot of similar messages that they are trying to convey. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah,
I
of
think at
course
the
there's
end of the
always
day,
cultural differences and things that here and there, but
mm,
if you're looking
mm,
at the deeper meanings of the stories, and you can
mm,
even see across some of the different uh, lineages, the
mm.
like, oh, this person is actually this person, right? Like you're saying,
Yeah, yeah,
Aphrodite's is Venus,
yeah, yeah.
and then Aphrodite looking at that another would be something else, and I
Mm,
could say in Egyptian, like Hathor was the goddess of like love and music and stuff, and is very similar to the Aphrodite and is connected to Venus. So there, in the Egyptian mythology, Hathor is said to have a temple on Venus, the actual planet.
mm.
So things
Yeah,
like that, where you can start to see how these things come together in different ways.
together. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, we're all looking up at the same sky.
Mm,
That's just what it is, right? So it actually makes a lot of sense.
yeah.
Um, that we have more in common than differences.
Yeah, definitely. So what is the
Mm.
connection between, so you talk about heroes and villains, myths, zodiac archetypes, and you even have an oracle deck out. I can't wait to get this oracle deck. I'm so excited. That
Uh,
kind of combines these things together. But when you look at each of those words differently, you're like, there's not, I mean, I understand heroes and villains fit together, but for the normal person, how do you explain the lineage and the connection between the heroes and villains, the myths and the zodiac archetypes?
Um, so I have three Oracle decks, yeah.
Mm.
Don't know which one that I should use as an example.
Pick,
So I will
use
let
your
you.
intuition, pick one, and let's do it.
So okay, so maybe I'll talk about two, yeah. So
Okay.
this is my very first publication. This was released actually about 2 years ago. It's called Oracle of the Mythic Heroes, and actually, I'm very very proud of this one because uh, usually I don't know if you use Oracle decks.
I do.
Um,
I
you do,
have a
okay.
whole stack over here.
Awesome. Okay. So one of the reason why I'm very proud of this project is because you can see how thick the guidebook is.
Oh yeah.
It's like a proper book.
Mm.
So and I personally penned this guidebook for this Oracle deck. Uh, this is not some kind of like 3 pages simple explanation, about okay, this card can give you two keywords and just follow your intuition. I actually half of the book is mythology storytelling, and then the other half of the book is from the story what is the teaching. uh,
Mm.
um,
Mm.
you know and what I did for this book was that I chose 40 different um, you can call them the mythic heroes or heroines or very unique characters from a Greek or Roman myth, and I associated them with different zodiac signs
Oh yeah.
in Western astrology. For example, Achilles, um, I associated him with the third decan of Aries, and the key word for him is confidence. So because I know that there are a lot of people who are into astrology. There are also a lot of people who are into more card readings, and I really wanted to create something to combine them together, and so that we can all find something that we can. It's easy for us to get into, right? To
Hmm.
feel a sense of affinity, right?
Yeah.
With, and so that's the inspiration behind this project. And of course, one of the key things that I also wanted to do was really to get people, more and more people, to be interested in using myth and storytelling for their own spiritual journey, for their spiritual uh, um, learning or
Oh, Yeah.
practice, daily practice, things like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because I think astrology is starting to become, it's not mainstream yet, but it's definitely becoming more well known. But I think if
Mm.
I found it fascinating because most people know about the 12 zodiac signs, but you already talked about the Daikon, right? Which there's
Yeah.
36 of those. And you said that
Yeah.
Aries was the third one. So can you explain for people that maybe that are like interested in astrology but don't know that deeper system, what exactly
Right.
that is?
Yeah, so every zodiac sign, so when we talk about the top zodiac signs, basically imagine you're cutting a pizza into 12 slices, right? And each slice of pizza is one zodiac sign in the sky. And further, if you slide that piece of one slice into three different equal parts, right? And each part, which is about 10 degrees in the sky, would cover 1 decade of that zodiac sign. So, for example, for Aries, the first 10 degrees of Aries would be the first decade. Okay, so from the 10th degree to the 20th degree, and that will be the second decade. And then following that which is the third decade, and that's it. And then after that, we move into Taurus.
Yeah.
So you can imagine 12 zodiac signs. um, each zodiac sign covers 30 degrees of the sky. That's 360 degrees of
Yeah.
the pie or the pizza,
Well,
so
one
to
pizza,
speak.
yeah. Okay, so let's go back since we've been using Aries as an example, and you have the three decans of Aries. What are the three mythological heroes that go with
Heroes,
each of
yeah.
those? Yeah.
So the first hero, the first decan of Aries, I used Theseus, the king of Athens. And his keyword is leadership. And that's a very, very important quality of the zodiac sign Aries. It does not, sorry, just to clarify this for our audience. When I say Aries, I don't mean Aries people. I mean Aries as the energy.
Aries has
The
the energy,
zodiac
right?
sign.
So Aries is fire, but it's also the first sign of the zodiac. It is the very beginning of the actual zodiac new year. It is the baby, it's the birth, it's the newness, right? And yet this is where
Correct.
you're
Yeah.
saying we have these three. We have, yes, you said confidence before, and so you have the leadership
Yeah.
first,
Yeah.
right?
And then following that is impatience.
And oh yes, oh that makes sense for Aries. I totally agree. Yeah.
Yeah.
and who is
And
and
for
who is impatience?
it's the Greek hero Bellerophon,
Okay.
who conquered the monster Chimera with his sacred Pegasus. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and the story basically was about him, being very heroic. He was this amazing, like, knight riding this beautiful white horse, right? But he couldn't wait to get to the sky. And after several achievements, he was just thinking, you know what, I need to reach the Olympia, and that's where I belong because I'm a hero, right? He
Mm-hmm.
couldn't. He was very, very impatient with his journey. And so he was rushing it, and eventually he was punished by Zeus. So Zeus threw a lightning bolt at him, and he fell. And so
Mm-hmm.
that was the story. And so the key word for him was impatience, and for Achilles, the third decan, which is confidence. Uh,
Okay, so we have those three decans, and how does that translate into, for someone that's using a system like this, or how does that translate into our own consciousness and how those show up for us? Because that's where I want to bridge. So for those of you out there, you high achievers, and you're like, why is this going to matter for me? This is where we're going to bring it into the body and be like, this is how you can use this.
uh, so the good thing about using oracle cards is that it can really be used based on your own timing, based on your own needs. So, for example, let's say you are um, you have a question, right? Something that you're wondering about. Okay, either it's about a business question, right? Your career, right? Starting a project, or maybe even about a personal relationship, etc., etc. And that's when you're consulting an oracle card and to see what your higher self is trying to deliver to you. And by pulling cards from the deck, and before that, I highly recommend that everyone should meditate a little bit before you actually trying to seek answers. And the card that you pull is basically telling you that this is the energy of that specific zodiac sign that either you need more or you are or it's too much, okay,
Mm,
at this moment. Thus it creates a sense of imbalance in us. And so by reading the stories, and you will be able to further connect yourself with this energy because you can actually see a hero or a heroine or a villain who actually experienced the same thing similar to you but thousands of years ago. And so then when you read the guidebook to the next chapter, which is a teaching, it will give you a very clear analysis about, okay, now you have read the story. What actually is this story trying to tell you? Um, and that's how I usually, personally, how I use Oracle cards, and also how I usually tell my clients or my students how to use
Mhm.
cards.
Mhm. Beautiful. And then deeper into that around the actual archetypes and those showing up in our systems. Like if somebody is going through an experience or having something, and maybe they're not using the cards. Is there the archetypes? How do those map us to our own like consciousness and our potential? How can we use that as a way to understand different things that we're going through?
It's all about acknowledgement and self-awareness, I think. I think at the end of the day, we already know that it's in there, but we just don't really have the hmm, either we don't think it's necessary, or we're just not aware that it means something to us.
Hmm.
So for example, let's say you pull a card which says Bellerophon and impatience. I mean, when we are seeing that card and we're reflecting on why, the reason why I'm pulling the cards, or the reason why I'm wondering about something, maybe there's a part of us already know that, but usually we don't want to hear that. See, for example, even when you're talking to your best friend about something, if your best friend tells you that I think you are being too impatient, I don't think we like to hear that. I don't think we like our friend to tell us that it's my problem because I'm impatient. We like to know that no, it should happen now. I'm not impatient. I'm patient enough, but it should happen now. So it's not my problem, it's other people's problem. But the Oracle cards, and this is why Oracle cards are amazing, because it provides you a very good self-reflective channel to realize that the things that you don't want to acknowledge. Uh,
So in your own life and working through
mm.
these, what has been a prominent archetype that has shown up for you time and time again?
Orpheus.
Okay, tell us about
Mm.
Orpheus.
And that's the chapter that I dedicated for the first decade of Cancer. And the keyword for Orpheus is healing. Uh, Orpheus was a legendary musician in Greek mythology, but he didn't play music for fun or as an entertainment channel. He would play music for patients. So, because in the ancient days, there was no anesthesia, so he
Hmm.
was the one going to people's houses and play beautiful melodies so that, the patient will feel less pain, healed by his music. But one of the most important story about him was that he lost his wife. His wife was bitten by a poisonous snake, and he couldn't let go. So he went down to the underworld to challenge Hades, the god of the underworld. And he said, I need my wife back. And Hades said, you can't have your wife back. Everyone dies. I'm sorry, that's just what it is. And Orpheus said, okay, let me play a song for you. If you love it, if you enjoy it, please give her back to me, right? Because I believe that my melody will be able to touch your heart. And so Hades said, okay, sure. And actually, he did a great job. He played this beautiful melody. And Hades said, okay, I'm going to make an exception for you. I will make sure that your wife's soul will be following you step by step back to the mortal world. That you have to promise me that you will not look back at her until you reach the sunlight. So Orpheus said, okay, sure, I will not look back. I'll trust you. So Orpheus was walking the darkness towards the exit, right, from the underworld to the mortal world. But the more he walked, the more he grew insecure because he couldn't hear any footsteps behind him. It was just that he was walking in dead silence. So he had no clue whether his wife was actually there or not. Um, and when he was just like one or two steps away from the sunlight, he wanted to make sure that his wife was there. So he turned around. He actually saw his wife for 1 second, and his wife's soul just dispersed into smoke, and he was banned from going to the underworld ever again. So Orpheus, this card has a lot to do with our inner fear of the future. And because of this fear of the future, and that's why we keep looking back into our past.
Mhm.
And this is actually a very deep story. We can actually decipher this story into so many different
Oh my
layers.
gosh. Yeah, there's so much to go down this rabbit hole on with this one. First off,
Yeah,
just the part about the music. Like we now scientifically know that sound, everything, everything string theory, working in quantum physics, string theory is the vibration that comes up into strings. That is the first frequency that turns into frequency. That is sound, right? That sound is so healing. And it's blasting apart cancer cells, and you can use it for
mm,
cymatics. I even believe that, sound raised the blocks for the pyramids in Egypt, right? Like the power. So just the story first of healing with music and the power of
yeah,
music and
yeah.
sound and frequency is like been a story being told for all time that we're just now really starting to understand.
Yeah, yeah, including sound healing, right? We do
Yeah,
singing bowl, handpan,
yeah.
very popular these days. Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
yeah, yeah. And that's
Mm,
ancient, right? That's been something that's been
yeah,
around for a really long time. I mean, I got my first singing bowls when I trekked through Nepal for a month and worked with
hmm,
women and children there. And, it's like the beauty of like understanding these ancient things that actually do work. And so that's one
yeah,
piece. And then this other piece of like, first, it's like he goes, Orpheus, he goes into the descent. He goes down into the underworld. He's willing to to take a risk, to do something, to save something that he loves. And
hmm.
then, but then there's that story of, this walking and finally in that fear that shows up for us. And we all have that in our lives. And
100%.
fears,
Yeah.
yeah. And,
The
and
fear,
so
the
how can we,
insecurity. Yeah. Mm,
yeah. So how does
mm.
someone like listening to the story? I see so many powerful ways that we can dive into it. How does someone use a story like this to really understand their own lives? Like so you said this is an archetype for you that you're really connected to. What parts of it, or it's the sound healing, the fear, the healing, what parts of it really connected with you and have showed up for you so often?
Well, I think a big part of it is about the past. It's about Orpheus looking back, and then including
Ah,
the initial part that him, descended into the underworld to try to get his wife back. Yes, it's about love, but it also is about he was also very much he can't move forward. Actually, it's very interesting because
can't
the
move
story
forward.
he can't move forward because after he failed to save his wife's life, he was banned from going to the underworld ever again. Now you
Yeah.
can imagine usually normally what we would do is that okay, we know that that can't happen, right? Someone is dead and now we have to bury them. We can mourn over it for a period of time, then we have to move forward. But Orpheus couldn't do that. So even after this whole experience, he pretty much swore to the sky and he said, I'll never marry again. I will never touch another woman because I'm in love with my wife. And actually, eventually, one version of the myth said that he was eventually killed by a group of crazy women who desired him but who couldn't have him. So they killed him and tore his body into pieces. And
Hmm.
so you in a way, Orpheus could have had an amazing life after this experience. He could have moved on. He could have had another family, married someone, and who said that he wouldn't be able to fall in love again? But somehow he would rather stay in that pain, even though his job was to heal other people's pain. But he chose, as his personal choice, he chose to stay with, in that pain for himself. And so I think this is also something for us to reflect on. Maybe a lot of us are doing something similar uh to that as well. Yeah. Mm.
Oh yeah, like if you like applying that to our modern lives and looking at how do we hold on to the past? How do we, I definitely, I mean, I'm no longer in that space, but I can remember it
Mm.
was some 20 years ago. I had my heart broken so deeply that I ended up becoming an international drug trafficker and I had to come and heal out of my life out of that. And it was like 25 years ago. But I swore at that time too, never again. I even, I swore off relationships and everything in my life for a
Yeah.
really long time because there was such a deep
Yeah.
wound
Mm.
around that. And we can look at these things and say, how often do we look into the past? Like if we're in the present, we're here and we're able, like we don't, worry is about what's going to happen in the future, regret about the past, like there's one way or the other that we always seem to be going. And this one's saying, if I stay in my past, if I stay in these things, then I'm not able to like have the life or the transformation or heal from that. So
Yeah.
if Orpheus could use a specific archetype to help him get out of this,
100%.
out of
Yeah, I
this,
think so.
which
Yeah. Mm.
archetype would be the one that would help someone to move through these types of things?
Orpheus is definitely, I would say, the most important one. I think. Yeah, because he staying in the past was actually his choice. He was not
Mm,
forced to stay in the past. He chose to
mm,
do that. He chose to suffer from that and to almost like stay away from the happiness or the pleasure that he could have, in
mm,
the future because of this past incident. And the part of it is also his guilt because he felt the reason why he couldn't save his dead wife was because of him, right? Because he looked back, he broke the promise that he
mm.
made to Hades. So the reason why his wife's soul dispersed into smoke was because he looked back. And so partially the reason why he couldn't, have a new family or meet someone else and just enjoy a new life is also because he felt guilty. That it was because of him, his wife was was not be able to be resurrected from the underworld. So there's a lot of different kind of emotion I think in there, and that also kind of like asks us when we're stuck in the past, we have to really understand that on the surface, it's a very simple. Okay, I can't really leave the past. I'm living in the past, but why? And what kind of negative emotion is the reason why we're staying there? Is it fear about the future because you don't believe in the better future there? That's why you rather live in the past, or is it because of guilt that you feel that if you move into the future that you will be guilt trapped by someone? There are many, many different patterns there. And I think those mythological stories are very, very good for us to really understand something that is deeper, hidden behind the surface phenomenon. Mm.
Yeah. So do you believe that these archetypes are simply like psychological symbols, or do they represent living energetics within human consciousness?
Both, I think. Yeah. And
Yeah,
this is
both.
what
Okay.
yeah,
Tell me
both. Yeah.
more.
Yeah. And this is something that I actually wrote in the guidebook, right? I said, well, the most important thing about um, not just about using this oracle deck, yeah, but to understand why certain things are happening and why we're experiencing this or that, is that you have to find what works for you. So what I mean by that is that, to coming back to your question, so for example, if someone says they are just very simple that I see, and they don't believe that this is something that goes deeper into their deep consciousness, which is fine as long as you believe that that's something that works for you, and that can help you move forward with your life. And I think then it has the myth, the story, or the oracle deck has already achieved its mission for you. And
Mm,
what I really want everybody to do is to not to be very dogmatic about this has to work in this way. Otherwise, any other way, it's wrong. Uh, this has to go this way, or you have to use it this way. You have to see things this way. That's the least that I want. If sometimes my clients will tell me very, very different things when they're using my Oracle decks, right? Why this deck will help them and how they use it. And my answer for them is always, as long as that's the best way for you from your perspective, that's all what matters. And you
yeah.
don't need to think there's only one way of doing this. Otherwise, it becomes too dogmatic. It becomes too rigid, and then we're losing the sense of spirituality.
Yeah. I think that when we can understand an archetype, then we allow that to say, okay, there's a part of me, right? Like the mother, the crone, the maiden, those types of archetypes or whatever, right?
Yeah,
Like I can
yeah,
see a part of myself in that and say, okay, what can I learn? Like there is a part of me that aligns to the belief around, like yeah, I am that in some way.
mm,
And then I can look
mm,
at that archetype and say, okay, what can I learn from that to apply to my life in a kind of way to support
correct.
me or
Yeah,
help me, right?
yeah,
Because I think that so many of us are living in unconscious patterns, right?
yeah,
Unconscious patterns, and these, by understanding and using this as another tool in our toolbox, we
yeah,
can look at that and say, okay, I have this unconscious pattern, and this archetype, this it allows me to understand or experience, or this hero or this villain, right, or this myth is actually showing me something about myself that's going to allow
yeah,
me
yeah.
to change. Because maybe I was actually having a walking with my photographer yesterday, and we're walking down a trail here in Austin, and he was literally talking about a system that he uses, and he said, yeah, he said, we're going through this relationship issue, and we looked this up, and it was like exactly what we're going through right now. And so it was like, oh, now I have a framework that I can say, okay, this is maybe not, I'm not making it up. Like this stuff happens. Like there's a way for me to work through this because now I'm aware of it.
Yeah, 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 yeah. And I think this awareness has to be practiced quite constantly
Yeah.
and regularly. I've seen a lot of cases when the client is very self-aware, like especially in counseling session, when you are going through their issues, right? There, some clients are very clear about their thinking pattern. They're very self-aware of the trap they're in. So there's nothing you need to teach them.
Hmm.
They have done a lot of reflection, but they still do the same thing. So then there's a different pattern when it comes to how to improve ourselves. One type is that we're not aware, and that's when the counseling session becomes very, very helpful, right? Because a counselor or your guide, your coach, will be able to guide you and clarify things for you.
Yeah.
But the other type of clients is that they're very aware, but they just can't do it. So, for
Yep.
example, when you talk about relationship issues, they know that they keep getting to toxic relationships. They
Yeah.
know that they tend to do this and do that. They very much will acknowledge everything, but they will just say, but I just can't stop
They
myself.
keep repeating the
So
same pattern. I call it a harmonic point, and it's where
yeah, yeah.
it's a spiral, and you keep hitting the same point over and over again, but with different people and different events, and it's, rooted in a pattern. There's this deep imprint in this pattern that shows up in this point where it keeps coming across time. Yeah,
Melissa,
yeah.
you're nicer than me, and you have a better name for that. I just say to the client, say that's addiction. That's an addiction. Yeah, that's an addiction. I always use this analogy. I say, well, someone who they know it's
Yeah,
bad for them. They're
yeah,
very
yeah,
aware
yeah,
it's bad for them, but they just still go back to there. Why?
yeah,
Because it's an addiction, right?
yeah.
Because there's certain pleasure that either you can have when you do that, or you keep hoping you will enjoy. Okay,
Hmm.
if you do that again. And one of the things about relationship is a little bit like that. So because usually people who does that a lot is because they have this very dreamy vision about maybe this will happen in the ideal way. If
Hmm.
I do more, if I try, maybe this time will be different. So they will look at that idealization and then look at the reality and thinking, but maybe this will become this, and that's why they keep doing that again, again, again. And so this is the type of addiction that is addicted to this illusion that we are creating in our mind.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, there are all different types of things
Yeah,
there,
I
but
mean, I in my
archetypes,
book, I
yeah,
do before I talk about harmonic points, I do talk about
yeah,
addiction in the
yeah,
society that the addiction that we all live in, whether it's to success or
yeah,
sex or drugs or a
yeah.
way of being. Right, we are living in a society that we all there's a massive addiction problem, and
Mm-mm, mm-mm.
100%. So I completely agree with that, but I kind of do frame things in a different way. So I love that.
Yeah, yeah.
And so diving deeper into the hero story, right? So we've heard of, Joseph Campbell has the hero with 1,000 faces, and there's this hero's journey that appears across so many traditions, and it involves like the descent, the shadow, the death, the rebirth, the transformation. Why do you think initiation through challenge seems to be such a universal human experience?
Well, because I think that that's why we are all born.
Mm.
In Taoism is interesting. In Taoism religion, there's one thing that's as a foundation of there's millions of theories in Taoism. They say that the reason why a baby is born, the first thing they do is cry, is because we came to this world to overcome challenges. Because we came to this world to learn lessons to overcome hardships, and that's why the baby came to this world. The first thing they do is not to laugh, is to cry. And
Mm-hmm.
so and that's the point of life. And so I think that a lot of us have this very, I mean, at least this is my personal opinion, and I think a lot of us have this very dreamy ideal, again, idealism, that human life is about joy and pleasure. And so 80% should be like that, and maybe the 20% is the suffering, but we will do our best to avoid that, because that's not going to make us feel good. But in Taoism is the opposite.
Yeah.
It's 80% is suffering. And the 20%, if you do well, lucky you, you get to enjoy the fruit. You get
Yeah.
to have some harvest. And so one of the things I think about life is that deep down, we all have to acknowledge one thing, that why we are here not to take everything we want, but we're here to understand either our own suffering or human suffering. Well, that's pretty much what Jesus conscious is anyway, right? Jesus
Mm-hmm.
sacrificed himself over the cross for humanity, and so things like that. And so I think the heroes and heroine story is the same. Nobody's perfect. If you read in details, right, Greek or Roman myth, you realize that nobody is perfect. There's no, and I'm not even talking about heroes and heroines. I'm talking about even gods. They are not omnipotent. Every god has weaknesses, and they're also jealous. They have ugly, very ugly side. They have affairs. They cheat on their partners, and so, and I think this is the thing that we have to really understand about human nature is that at the end of the day, there's a lot of darkness actually in us, and we came to this world to understand how to work with our darkness, and that's the point of life.
And so to be able to go on the hero's journey, we must have some villains, right? We need the balance of that. And so
Yeah,
I'd love to dive into the villains a little bit because I think that this is a really powerful, because I think sometimes, at least, in all the healing work and the world that I've been in for so long, and
yeah,
especially right now, I live in Austin, Texas, and there's a big spiritual distortion going on where everybody's love and light, everything's out, and you're like, everybody's doing plant medicine and like, you're just like, okay, well, what about the rest of it? What about the grit and the
yeah.
dirt and the shadow work, right?
Correct.
So
Yeah.
what do the mythological villains teach us about the shadow side of human nature?
Actually, I have a very unique way of looking at this. Yeah, to me,
Yeah.
of course, yeah, we can identify uh, those heroes and heroines as heroes or villains or yeah, whatever. Yeah, but to me, I think a hero is a villain, a villain is a hero.
Oh, I
That's what
love
I think.
this.
Nobody's perfect, and when you look at a hero's journey, you will see the ugly side of that hero. When you see a villain, there's also parts of the villain that you might feel very compassionate about. And so I think that maybe there's no need to really separate them. You are a hero, you are a villain,
Mm.
and I think that's also
Oh
the
my
reason
gosh, I
why.
love I love this
Mm,
idea so much, and I think that you're completely right, because have you ever watched a movie and you're like the one that's supposed to be the villain and you're kind of compassionate and being like,
yeah,
I kind of hope that he gets the thing or robs the
yeah,
thing or does the whatever, because all of these other
right, yeah,
qualities of things
yeah,
that happen, and that truly, like, I work with like the divine masculine and the feminine, the interior, right? We have all of these qualities within us, both of
yeah,
them,
yeah, yeah.
so
Mm.
much. And so in this idea behind that, so what do these things teach us about our unintegrated selves? Like, what can we learn from this integration of the hero and the villain, and looking at our own selves?
Um,
Mhm.
we, I think it's just as simple as who we are. I mean, we can, anybody who is living around us, you can have a very dedicated mother around you who is sacrificing her life for her children and all these beautiful things, but she has her own shadows, right? It just we are not seeing that. And in this oracle deck, your Legends, Heroes, and Villains oracle, which just came out about 2 weeks ago, it's my
Yeah.
latest publication. Um, Actually, one of the characters that I wrote, um, that was also dedicated to the zodiac sign of Leo, whose name was Fritz Haber. He was actually a villain in this book, but in the book, I actually wrote a lot about the two sides of him. He was actually a scientist. He was a chemist during the First World War, and he
Mm.
was one who revolutionized, the usage of ammonia. Okay, and producing ammonia from nitrogen, which is a very revolutionary scientific breakthrough during that period of time. And we were able to grow crops, okay, and double and triple the production because of his invention, because we're able to create more and more fertilizers for
Mhm.
crops using this method. But later he derailed. He used his chemical talent, right, in chemistry to create
Right.
chemical weapons.
Yeah.
And he defended the Nazi Germany back then. So he was very much this two sides, two faced, not two faced, sorry, but two sides, villain hero. See, without him, we will never be able to have this agricultural production these days. We'll never be able to feed so millions of people around the world. But he also killed millions of people, right?
Mhm.
And so I think that this part of the integration of hero and the villain is to understand that we ourselves, each one of us, we are a villain, we're also a hero. And how do you want to nurture the hero, and how do you want to educate the villain?
Yeah.
And
Well,
that's really the point.
and that's very much like you've heard of like the victim's triangle, right? Where you are the savior, the prosecutor, or the hero, right? As long as you're on that triangle, you've got one of those. And I know definitely for myself, in my 20s, I said before, I was an international drug trafficker. A lot of people went to prison. I did some really, really bad things. And I spent years after that, when I got out and doing the things like trying to, and I was a bad mother and I did all these things, right? Like there's a lot of villain in me, and like years working towards healing that to become to become the other side of that. And then I did go for years when I first started my healing and coaching business into the savior side, where I thought I was going to save people, because I was like projecting outside of myself these things of like, well, here I'm the, now since I've been such a villain, let me go and like save people. And then I've come to this balance of like, I can't do either. I'm just here to send a message. But I think that's what's happening collectively in the world right now. We have this, a lot of people avoiding shadow work, projecting the villain outside of themselves, and we have this, this experience happening in the world right now where we don't have that integration. So I'm going to go down the rabbit hole with you here, and I'm going to love your answer for this. But in our modern day, of the villains that we are, that are being experienced in our modern day, is there anyone that stands out to you that has both, that is looked at one way or the other, like a villain or a hero, and that's really encompassing both of those experiences right now, that's really shaping the way that the world works? Anything that
our president. Yeah, but we shouldn't get into that, to be honest.
No, but it was funny, but I agree 100% with you, right? That there's half of the world sees that as a hero, the other half of the world as a villain, and yet in the end, it's really the integration. It's a both and. There's both of those things are true in many, many ways, and so that just shows the human consciousness, how we are. Like we are such, myriad beings with so many different things. We're not just one. It's not just one thing, right? Yeah.
And this two, this total either black or white mentality, I think really created a lot of conflict. Yeah, in our daily life as well. Just even during I believe that in the States, because I have some friends in the States, and they tell me that they actually lose friends when it comes to the election.
Yeah, and I don't understand that. One of the things that I know, even science and biology says diversity is the thing that keeps the world going. Right, the more homogenous we become, the more plants can't survive. The earth dies.
Yeah.
We need. I don't want you to be exactly like me and have all of the same opinions as me and think all the same things. I want a difference. I want to have someone to open my mind. I want to be able to have an experience of like expanded. That's why I've been to 63 countries. I've lived in countries so that I could learn cultures to expand my consciousness, because I didn't want to be the person that only saw things from this one point of view.
Yeah. And if we can, become more open toward those different things, and then, but actually, sometimes it's really about, it's about, eventually, it's, and especially in politics, I believe that it's just because we all have our own agenda. Yeah. Everybody has their own agenda, and so whatever that we're saying, what we're doing is to make sure that agenda will go through. And that's just what it is. Yeah. Thousands of years old, even politicians living in 2000 years ago, they did the same thing. So I guess it's just gonna be like this forever.
Okay, well, that's what I was going to ask next. So do you think that humanity is evolving consciously, or just repeating the same old cycles in new forms?
They are evolving, but they are also repeating the same cycle, just like the planets. The planet will always go around the sun in cycles, right? And so maybe the problem on the surface will be different, but they deep down will reflect something very, very similar, I think.
Do you think it's possible for us to change and to stop repeating the cycles?
Well, you mean all of us?
I mean,
I think there are always going to be people who are very enlightened, right? Whose role, who came to this world is to enlighten the humanity. And there are always going to be people making amazing contribution, right, in different areas um, for human society, right? And
Mm,
they are humanitarians. They are very self-sacrificial. They love humanity, right? They want to do everything to protect, the environment or whatever that is. But the thing is that they also have enemies.
yeah.
They will also have people who are going to go against them. And so society, I think, it believe is a little bit like that. When those good people are in power, society will evolve. But then things change. And when someone else is in power, then we'll go back to a little bit like two steps forward and one step backward. And
Hmm.
then two steps forward and one step backward. It's a little bit like that. So as our individual, each one of us, the only thing that we can do is to make sure that we always want those good people to be in power, and that's it.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah.
So, for our audience out there that likes to have simple tools and techniques to take away with them every day, what is one practice, one simple thing that you're like, this is what I would suggest or I do on a daily basis that
Uh,
really supports me in in my life.
Please use my Oracle decks.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah.
And if you go
Um,
to the show notes below in the links, you're going to be able to get find the link to get the newest book. What's the name of it again?
Legends, Heroes, and Villains Oracle. Yeah.
Yeah, you'll also
Okay.
see in the show notes you'll be able to connect. So there's all of that information is
Mhm.
below.
Yeah.
I love Oracle decks. I'm actually excited. I'm going to be getting this one. I don't have it yet.
Very
So
good.
yeah,
It just
so there we
released.
go.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, just released
And
about
and
two
there is
weeks
a
ago.
power. This sounds like it might be woo woo or something like that, but it's really not. There's a really powerful way when you're working with the energies of things that we
Yeah.
can use these decks to really
Ah,
understand parts of ourselves. Yeah.
especially our audience, if you feel that, oh, Oracle cards, God is a little bit too woo woo. This card actually, they're all historical figures, influential people around the world. We have Harriet Tubman on top. Okay,
Oh, cool.
we have Eva Perón, okay, from Argentina. We have Elena Sandler. Okay, we have Charles Ponzi, okay, the villain. So this Oracle deck has
Oh, it's a very
36,
modern. That's really
very modern.
cool.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
So
yeah.
it contains 36 influential figures. Some of them already passed away. A few of them still alive these days. And I think this deck could also, first of all, is very good for our personal reflection, right? Learning the stories of our influential figures, but also this is a great gift for children or teenagers who want to
Mm,
learn about the influential figures around the world. And especially because my background is Chinese, I particularly included about one third of the heroes and villains are from my culture. Chinese, Japanese, Singaporeans, Indians,
great. So it's
you
not
know,
just an Americanized Oracle. Fabulous. I
uh,
like that.
correct. So there's American, there's Europeans. That, for example, one of the villains that
Great.
we have here is Marie Antoinette, right? The last queen of France. So
Yeah.
Europeans and South Americans, Africans as well. Yeah. So
Oh,
yeah.
wonderful.
Mm.
Beautiful.
So I think that will
So,
be interesting for people. Yeah.
yeah, so you guys can go to the show notes below and find all the different ways to connect. So, do you do personal readings for people?
Correct. Yeah. So my main business is actually a spiritual counseling, one-to-one counseling session with clients.
Oh,
Yeah. Yeah.
awesome.
If our audience visit my personal website, they will be able to find the ways to get in touch with me or to book a personal session with me.
Yeah. And all
Yeah.
of that is below in the show notes. So we'll have that. So one of our final questions for today before we go that I ask everyone, what does high on life mean to you?
High on life. Ooh. Ooh, this is a very difficult question, actually. I can only speak from my
Yeah,
personal
that's all I want is
experience.
your personal
When I
perspective.
when I feel I am high on life, I feel like I'm really able to use my resource or use my talent to to positively influence the people who are in need, and that's what I call high on life. And usually, when I feel very low, it's because I feel like I can't help them. there's nothing I can do within my capability or anything. There's nothing I can do for them. And that's usually that usually gives me a very makes me feel very disheartened. And actually one of the first yeah, when I first started my business, I think it was maybe the second or the third month into my business. It was like 12 years ago. It was because of that. Because I had a client, and because I was not very experienced back then, I did not know how to help her, and she was very upset. And I had to call my teacher, spirit teacher, after the session, and I was in tears with my teacher. And I said, I don't know why I'm this upset. And my teacher said one thing to me, and which really got me understood what this was about. My teacher said, because you realize that you couldn't help her, and she also couldn't appreciate your help. And so, and that's where the frustration came and where the sadness came. And so that's the low, and the opposite would be the
Yeah,
high.
I love that.
Yeah.
I always ask that because you are on high on life.
Mm.
Thank you, Letao, for everything that you shared with us today. It's been an fascinating and wonderful conversation, and I'm so excited to share this with the world.
Thank you so much for having me. Have a wonderful day.
All right. Bye bye, everybody.